Hello, everybody, and welcome to a special edition of the Better You podcast. We're talking about mental preparation and how that impacts high performance jobs or environments, however you want to look at it. Um, think like professional sports, getting into prestigious universities, things like that. Um, Yesterday, maybe it was the day before, I don't know, but I got um, an email that had a clip of the current pickleball champion, which I mean, pickleball has kind of exploded lately. It's super popular just out of nowhere in the last 2 years, and it's been around since I think like the 70s or 80s, maybe even before that. But just in the last few years, it's really exploded in popularity. But now there is a pickleball champion, and the lady that currently holds the title, when they were interviewing her, she talked about two things. One, her relationship with her mom and how they competed with each other and made each other better, but also about how she took the time to get essentially a mental preparedness coach to help her develop the headspace, I guess, that she needed to be in order to perform at that level. So I'm gonna kick it over to Dr. Tilden first. What are your thoughts on that?
Well, I think that it's really important for people to have, for athletes, to have someone that they can go to discuss their mental health. I mean, several athletes, such as like Simone Biles and Naomi Osaka, have really brought attention when they took some time off because of their mental health problems, like anxiety and depression. I think they brought that kind of to the forefront that athletes do suffer anxiety, depression, like like everybody else. You might think, oh, they're this wonderful athlete, they're getting paid a lot, everything's great, but they have the same mental health struggles that we have, and they even have additional ones given, like an elite athlete, um, because a lot of times it becomes their whole identity. That's who they are, and then when they get injured or have to retire or whatever, they have a really hard time transitioning to that not being who they are anymore and having to develop another identity. Um, there's a lot of burnout and training, rigorous travel schedules, dynamics between other players, dynamics with the coach. So there's a lot on their plate that they have to contend with. The fear of public scrutiny when they, of like if they fail, how everyone's going to react. They get booed, they get fired, they get, a lot of other things. So I think that having mental wellness, awareness is really important for athletes of all levels, student athletes, youth, because youth, I think when they give, when you start to, they have more structured training than either professional teams do, and
Mhm.
they can start to see, like, have that just be their whole being when there's kind of limited perspective on maybe other things in life, like they're just this person, to the exclusion of anything else at a very young age.
Absolutely, absolutely. Uh, Ali, Robbie, I know both of you are very into physical fitness and wellness. Do you have any thoughts on this?
Certainly. And I know that I've maybe disclosed in other podcasts that I have, experience working in an Ivy League setting. So, the pressure and the standards are set very high for a lot of these, younger and older athletes. I think of it as the legacy as well. So, as we all know the name Shaq, right? So when we think about these, professional level athletes, right? Like we think about what they've been through, the training that they've, disclosed, and also just seeing, where they've started, but where they've finished. So, as we see, like with Shaq, he's a commentator. I don't know if anybody watched the basketball game last night.
Yeah.
Very high intensity, I should say. But you see these commentators, and you know that they were once on the court, and then they can speak on it. So, you know, maybe somebody who is a prospective athlete, somebody who is dreaming about being an athlete when they're older, they look up to these people so that the bar is set very high. So I can see where, someone can become burnt out, somebody can feel that pressure. And I think too, especially with kiddos, right? Like we might see the structure, like Dr. Tilton was saying, even going to the parents, like parents might come to the games and say, hey, like you have to play this way. We have your all-star travels coming up. So there's a lot of pressure, not just within the player.
Yeah, and professional teams now are required to have a sports psychologist on staff. So a lot of them have that, which is great. They can go there to talk about, mental health problems, and money problems, because as we know, a lot of professional athletes end up with no money by the time they quit playing for various reasons. I know that they, in addition to sports psychologists, they also have someone who tries to counsel them when they first start on how their mental health, like we've been talking about in other podcasts, and their financial acumen relate to each other.
Yeah, that's a good point, and I think it goes to what we kind of continue to say about how like it all ties to mental health. Like if you're mentally prepared, if you're mentally clear and all of that stuff, a lot of these decisions in life become uh, a lot easier, I think.
Well, and also I think that the role of the coach first and foremost, and then the sports psychologist on the team, is to foster like open, informed discussions about mental health, and not just when you get to a crisis center, when you need a crisis intervention, but before that happens, this is continuum, and so to reduce the stigma amongst, hopefully the team, that it's okay. I mean, Michael Phelps is one of the most decorated Olympians in history, and he's been very open about his depression and very open about the importance of getting treatment.
I was actually just about to bring him up, and thank you so much for doing that, because I remember years ago there was like I don't know if you remember the other U.S. swimmer Ryan Lochte, and like there was like, oh, Ryan Lochte's in better shape and he has better stats and all this, and he's going to break all of Michael Phelps's records, and then it got time to it, and he didn't. Like Michael Phelps was still the champion that he was. And, it comes down to, in my opinion, especially like I saw an interview with him and you could tell that like he was a little rattled. I'm talking about Ryan Lochte in this case. Um, but like it came down to the mental side of it, like Michael Phelps wasn't just a champion because he had, the perfect swim stroke or anything like that. He also was ready for every swim, for every leg of the race that he was doing. And I think we, as fans and as people, tend to underemphasize how important the mental game is. And like it's crazy to me because you look at like champions or people that were like, oh, they're the GOAT, the greatest of all time. And when you talk to them, or when you I've never talked to any of these people, but when you see interviews with them, it's really the mental preparedness where they shine through. Like I don't know if any of you saw the Michael Jordan documentary, and he has like a chair in his house where he just sits down and like prepares mentally for his performance. Like it's mental. Sorry, that's me on my.
No, I just watched the Rafael Nadal documentary, and he has some problem with his foot. That's a really rare deformity in his foot that they diagnosed when he was very young at the start of his career, and made something like a special thing to put in his shoe. But it was really painful, and he played through that pain for like 20, 25 more years because he just had that mental preparedness that I can go through the pain. I'm ready to do this. I'm ready to win. And that's how he got through, the pain of his foot.
Yeah.
Well, and also like, go ahead. Take
go ahead.
Naomi Osaka, and she's famous for having this really bad anxiety, which is why she took a lot of time off. but she, she could play in front of, I don't know how many people they play for, 20,000, 10,000, 20,000 people, and do fine and do really well, excel actually. But then when it came time to doing the post game interviews, she couldn't do it because she was so anxious. She just couldn't do it. And that's part of her contract. And she's like, I'm not doing it. And it was, they banned her from several Grand Slam tournaments. So like, if you're not going to talk to the press afterwards, you're not playing. So it's weird that you could have this dichotomy of, I'll play in front of 10,000 people, but I will not talk to like 10 reporters. Like, no.
Well, it's also like, I know for me with my own mental preparedness and my own work, like there's a bandwidth that I have for pushing through things that I really struggle with mentally. And like I can force myself to do it, but I'm exhausted afterward,
Yeah.
And I think that that's very true of athletes. And one of the things that I just thought of, because we've been talking about athletes and that's kind of typical, but it applies to any sort of high performance or high stress environment, how important the mental game is. Um, and I was actually thinking of way back when I was much younger. Um, I used to be a musician and I hung out with musicians and all that stuff. And I think about like the stress that happens when you're playing a show, especially if you're playing like if you're in a band and you're playing an important show, like, hey, this is the biggest show we've ever done, like it's going to get us a lot of exposure. There's a lot of stress that comes with that. And I've seen a lot of bands or specifically it's usually one or two band members that kind of choke under that and they're not their usual selves. They don't have the charisma or energy or sometimes they just can't even get the beat right. Um, and I think that for the music industry, specifically for, pop, rock, rap music, the mental preparedness comes in the form of drugs, which is unfortunate. And I think it's why there's such a high addiction rate in the music industry. Um, but I think it's the other way, it's because that part is never focused on when people are talking about, oh, I got to be a better musician, I got to uh do better. They're just looking at the playing the right notes or hitting the right beats versus, am I ready to put on a show?
Well, kind of going back to anxiety with high pressure jobs. This one isn't about athletes, but I had a client come. He worked at the Chicago Board of Trade, so he's a trader, and it's a high pressure job. And he came for therapy and said, I'm really, really, really anxious, and it's kind of interfering with functioning in my life and my job performance. And he said, but I don't want to get rid of all my anxiety because a certain amount of anxiety helps me perform better. But then it goes up here, and then there's the tipping point where it becomes dysfunctional. But he's like, I need some anxiety for my job, because it makes me do it better. But I have too much, and now it's not working for me.
Yeah,
that's interesting.
Yeah. On that note, do you guys think that like holistically, like meditation, as an example, can help with anxiety? The great point that Ellie brought up was about Shaq and the finals that's happening right now. I think there's a 21 or 22-year-old playing for San Antonio Spurs at the moment. And one of the things that he had done in off season last year was that he went to a Shaolin temple, all the way to China, trained with the monks, dribbled basketball, and mind you, he's 7'2", so very tall.
You're talking about Wemby.
Wemby, yes.
Yeah.
So he like, and one of the main things he said, this is like, I mean, again, privileged to be able to do that, and then also just the mental discipline, right? Like I admire that a lot of like, okay, you have all these stuff going on around you. You, no matter what, like you have to be the best at what you do. When does that stop, or like, how do you keep going?
Well, there's kind of, it's kind of related to meditation a little bit, but and like kind of grounding yourself. There's a professional football player, and I can't remember what team he plays for now, but they show him during, like, when they're on the sidelines, he's reading a book, and everyone, the fans are like, why is he just sitting over there reading in the middle of a game? But he's reading this book about, like, it's a meditative book, and about how that relates to pushing yourself, and what it can do for you. And if you have this, state of mind, then you'll perform better. And that book, just sold like, 3 million copies right after everyone learned the name of it.
Wow.
But yeah, it's just funny to look over and see him reading in the middle of a game. But it helps me. He's like, it helps me, when I have the chance to do it between when I'm playing and not playing. He's like, it really, has an effect on me.
Yeah, some people have Skittles as a mental discipline. I don't know if you have seen. There's an NFL player, like as a sugar rush to get him like pumped up, and like he was amazing at what he did as well. Marshawn Lynch was his name. Played for Seattle Hawks. So, like on the sidelines, you just see him like eating bowls of cereal.
That's funny.
Marshawn Lynch is one of my favorite players.
Yeah, he's good.
He's just fantastic and also hilarious. But I think that, like, keeping things in the NFL and keeping things on the, we downplay the importance of the mental game in these high performance environments. I think the best example of that everybody knows is Tom Brady. Like, Tom Brady's not a phenomenal athlete. He's a phenomenal athlete compared to us, but compared to people in the NFL, he's, mediocre at best. But where he wins and where he won consistently was he stayed in the game the whole game, and he could be way down, in the third, and his mental game just kicked in, and in the fourth he would, 2, 3, 4 touchdowns. And that is the mental game. Another example on hockey, one of my favorite athletes of all time, Wayne Gretzky, really the absolute worst stats in NHL history at the time when he was in the NHL, and one of the greatest players in the NHL of all time. So I think we tend to just not, we think about, oh yeah, you got to be athletic, you got to be whatever. Absolutely true. But what I see is that the people who really shine are the people who have the mental game figured out.
Well, yeah, I saw, I'm a Kansas City Chiefs fan, and they, they didn't have the best 2 seasons, but anyway, that's besides the point. That Patrick Mahomes, a lot of times they're down like, third quarter, and then the fourth starts, and then the same thing. He gets like 4 touchdowns and like that. And I heard some of the commentators saying that they're like, if he could only convince himself mentally that every quarter was the last quarter and play like that through the rest of the game, they're like, he'd be there, they'd be set. But instead it comes down to this last, minute thing where I guess he thrives under that pressure. But they're like, if he could just change his mental state to, so it would be like that the entire game, which I thought was interesting.
Yeah, it's such a, especially in athletics, but I think in anything that's where high performance is the standard versus, the goal, the mental game is just so important. And I think we tend to, I've said this before, but we tend to overlook it. But to play devil's advocate, I will say, I remember being an athlete when I was in my teens and young adulthood. And there is something to be said about like running the drills and it building up muscle memory, as it were. Like there are definitely times, and I've experienced this, and I feel like most athletes at some point have, where, your body's just moving on its own. Because you're so used to the action, or you're so used to it. But I do think that that's part of it. And then the other part of it is, hey, making sure that I'm prepared, making sure that I can stay in the game and stay focused on the whole game versus just, hey, I'm dribbling the ball or I'm running down the field or whatever it may be. Because there's a whole game evolving around you. And that's true of any high performance thing. There's, if you're a musician, you're generally you're in a band and you're carrying part of the song
Mm,
and you have to be willing to adapt. Like, I don't know if any of you have experienced this, but like there'll be times when you're playing and somebody switches things up, but it kind of works, and then you just kind of have to go with it. And people who aren't ready in that mental state, they don't go with it, and it stays bland, and it and not to be harsh, but unoriginal.
mhm. Well, NFL players of all the professional sports, NFL players have the shortest career, usually due to injuries. So I think there's additional pressure on them to, you know, perform as well as you can for the short amount of. I mean, Tom Brady's kind of an anomaly because he played till he was like 44 or something, 42. But for most athletes who have played, like say in the NFL or any other sports, it's a limited time frame that they have, to play, and so then if say they get injured and then that plays into their mental state, and I think having a mental state is important for them to like start preparing to come back. But given that that's their whole identity and they're thinking they can be let go at any moment, like you have 2 bad games and then see ya. It's just a ton of pressure.
Oh yeah, and that's also nothing to speak of the culture in some of these teams. I don't know if any of you are familiar with Terry Crews. He was Terrence Jeffords on Brooklyn Nine-Nine, and he's been in a bunch of other stuff. But he also used to play in the NFL, not as a starter, but like backup or something like that. But he was saying that he decided to hang it up because, like, it still pays decent to play in the NFL, even if you're not a starter. But he decided to hang it up specifically because the way that he was treated at some of the places where he worked because he wasn't a starter
Oh wow.
was getting to him mentally. And he was taking that home and all of that other stuff.
I also think
Yeah.
things that people forget is like adapting. When you are in that like high stress, like high energy environment, like you are going to adapt at a point where like you want to be, similar to them, how they're like behaving or how their like performances, or you want to get better at them. So that competition definitely breaks a barrier, like mentally in a way of like, okay, I need to get better.
Mhm.
It's like same thing with like adapting to like running, wherever you're starting, it's always that one step at a time rather than like making sure everything's in like, let's just do this right now. I'm going to do this. I'm going to do that. Like, you're not going to be able to like go and run 10 miles right off the bat. Like, you're going to be sore the next day. But let's do like 50 yards, and then go from there. I think adapting is a very big, at least from my end, in the sports.
Yeah, absolutely. It's also, especially for somebody like Tom Brady or any as it were aging athlete or injured athlete. I think it's very important to have the conversation with yourself of what are you capable of in the moment versus what do you know you should be able to do. Like, I think a great example of that is Derrick Rose. I don't know if any of you remember him, but he was a phenomenal player when he was
He
healthy.
wasn't injured.
And
Yeah. Which was
and like
risky
he would
time.
always come back too soon
Yeah.
and then immediately injure himself. And that was one because, you know, most of us live in Chicago, but I remember watching his games and being like, just rest longer, man. Bulls are only good when you're playing.
Yeah. But I think that, kind of returning to youth and how they have more structured training time than even professional players. Because during the off season for professional athletes, they train on their own. They're not required to go to practice or anything like that. They're just responsible for their own training. But youth, we oddly have to still go to practices before the actual season starts. So they get a very, very small break. You know, they have, it seems like these days kids have a lot of homework. I talk to adolescents that I've seen, and they're just, you know, they stay up till midnight every night doing school stuff. If they, you know, their homework, if they want to play a sport that lasts till like say 5 or 6, then they have to come home and do, you know, 6 hours of homework. So it's crazy the pressure that it's putting on them too. And, you know, people that age need a lot of sleep and they're not getting it. And then that disrupts everything if you're not sleeping well.
It's very true.
Absolutely.
Ali, this one's for you. I know you have a background in the fitness industry, and I know you've been a trainer as well. And now, you know, congratulations on your obtaining your license. That's very proud moment.
Thank you. Thank you.
So just wanted to gather your thoughts on like when you were a trainer or when you were competition, like when you were going in competition, like what was your mindset and like how did you know now like how you are right now with the psychology, like human psychology, like what would you have changed when you were in the past or gotten better?
That, you know, that's a good question, but I think it all comes back to what we've been talking about of the mental discipline. So, yes, I did go and take my exam, and I'm awaiting in the process to obtain my full license in mental health, as a, you know, licensed mental health counselor. And it was funny because for many years, you know, you suppress you know, the activities and such because of the work you're, you know, doing now. I still go to the gym. I try to go every day. I do Stairmaster every other day, you know, things like that, stay in your routine, but life gets in the way, right? But if I was going to tell my younger self anything, it would be to just be patient, right? Be patient because that's a big part of it. So it's funny, we're talking about all these different players. Recently, you know, you go on TikTok, you go on YouTube, on repeat before my exam, when I'd be walking the dog, when I'd be in the car, when I'd be in the gym, I would be listening to like Steph Curry. I don't know if you guys have seen his commercial about being loyal, but you think about, okay, well, that's his loyalty of being on the same team and passing to the same guy and not changing things. But for me, it's the loyalty to our work in mental health, but also the loyalty to your own mental discipline. So, I smile thinking about it because, you know, again, um, you know, there's a few different meanings of when we're afraid, right? We can face everything and conquer, or we can forget everything and run, you know? So looking at it in those different scopes can help us to be empowered and go to that next step we need.
Yeah, that's a good point.
Patience. Thank you.
Yes.
Absolutely. I think it's so often it's about what mindset works for you. Um, you know, like what mindset works as a motivator. I think, you know, you look at somebody like Michael Jordan and it was strictly competition. Like on everything that he did, competition fueled him. Um, but that may not be your motivator. It might be something else, you know. It for some people, like back when I was playing hockey, for some people it was just straight up anger, but it worked. You know, for some people it can be anything. It doesn't really matter.
Yeah.
But I think that that the mental work and the mental preparedness that goes into that is so important because if you can't find that motivator to get over the hurdles and to kind of keep going, whether you're an athlete, musician, stock trader, whatever, um, you're going to end up in a situation where you're just stuck.
Yeah,
Well,
that's a
oh, go ahead.
Oh, I was just going to jump in, and that is a good point. And I listen to a lot of like podcast speakers and big name podcasters, I should just say it like that. And what they, you know, say is when people wake up, sometimes it's like, I have to do this, I have to do that. Whereas, you know, when we've trained ourselves with that mental resilience and that mental discipline, we wake up and we don't think about it. We just work the long shifts, we go to the gym, because if you, step back and examine your routine, you'll go, wow, like, this is maybe too much, or maybe this is, really burning me out. So I think too, for some folks, and I think it kind of goes back to the competition aspect of it, right? Like, we're not competing with other people. We're competing with ourselves to be better than yesterday, the day before, etc.
As to Aaron's point about some people just being angry, that motivates them. An extreme example is Mike Tyson. And I watched the documentary about him, and it was fascinating. And he said that when he quit, it's because he just wasn't angry anymore. And he's like, the whole time that I was great, I was so mad all the time in every aspect of my life. But then he's like, I lost that anger, and that's when I started losing.
Yeah, I mean, it's especially important for Mike Tyson because the first
Fighting people's ears.
boxing match I remember watching was Mike Tyson, and it was like 30 seconds maybe, where he just hauled off and hit a guy once and he was down.
Yeah, they kind of had this montage of at the beginning of the documentary of it's just exactly that, like 12 different snapshots of boxing matches where same thing, within 2 minutes that guy was knocked out, and like not even moving, knocked out, like not trying to get up, knocked out. And it was fascinating to watch.
Yeah. Yeah. And I think that goes to something that we've touched on in other podcasts about how we as people tend to view emotions as purely positive or purely negative, but they can be, if handled correctly, if going through the mental clarity and preparedness and all of the things that you would do with a therapist, they can be very powerful. I mean, yeah, like Mike Tyson was a machine. And yeah, I can imagine if he's not hitting people angry, he's probably not hitting as hard. And
Right.
that's his, like,
Yeah, that
that's
was
what
the end of
he's,
his career.
yeah.
Yeah. By his choice. I mean, but he just wasn't the world champion anymore. And he kept having these fights as he got older, and he's like, I feel better about myself, and it's affecting my performance.
Did you guys see the fight with him and Logan Paul?
Yes.
Oh, so disappointing.
He lost like
You can
100
see it on
pounds.
his face. He was just
that.
like, just get through this. Like, he
Yeah.
looked more bored than I did.
Yeah. I don't know if it's true or not, but I read that they're really good friends, and that it was just kind of, for show, that they already agreed like beforehand. I don't know if that's true or not. It could just be an internet thing. But that's why neither one of them were particularly engaged in the match, because they're like, we already know, like, split the money. We know who's going to win. Let's just go out there and give them a show.
I mean, I can see that event made a ton of money and it was terrible.
Yeah.
Also feel like high performance anxiety is like, I know the stock trader, Dr. Tilton, that you mentioned, it's very big, and it's probably like a nerve-wracking. But I don't know if you guys have heard of Matt Frazier. He's a CrossFit 5-time champion. And before every single game, he would have this anxiety attack, and then like winning it 5 times, he accepted the fact of like, okay, this is what it is. I'm gonna have to, accept this and then move on. And one of the things that he had mentioned was like, you guys all have said it multiple times, is the importance of sleep. Where like, if you think about sleep as like, oh, the night comes and then you rest, rather than like, oh, okay, if there's a time in the day, take a nap. It's okay. Funny story, there was I was taking a train to the city yesterday, and then I was at the train station, and this random lady just walked by, and she's like, hey, like, do you know where Belmont is? I was like, it should be in the train going to the city. And she just said like, I fell asleep on the train. And then she missed her stop and like ended up like coming into a different stop. But one of the main things she mentioned, she's like, I just feel so refreshed. Like she felt bad that she like slept and took a nap, but I was like, she's like, at the same time, I feel great. So
Yeah.
just the importance of sleep is very deep.
My father was CFO for several different companies, and he worked, really long hours. And he said that during the day, he's like, I lock my office door and take like a 20-minute nap. He's like, it totally changes. He's like, because I'm like getting so burnt out by like 1, because he went there like 6 in the morning, and he said it totally changed. It makes the rest of my afternoon so much better. He's like, I don't think I could like make it through the whole like 12 hours, 14-hour day had I not done that. So sleep is super important. And I know they say there's only like certain amounts of time you should sleep, like either 15 minutes and no more than 45 minutes, like, but 15 minutes is ideal. So you sleep longer than that, you'll start to really go into REM sleep, and then you wake up more tired.
Apparently, Cristiano Ronaldo takes about 6 naps a day.
He does?
He does.
Wow. That's a lot of naps. But it seems to be working for him. He's amazing.
He is one of the greatest.
I was reading something a little bit ago that was talking about how Leonardo da Vinci actually slept more than most people, like 10, 11 hours a day, but he didn't actually sleep at night. He just took naps. He took like a ton of naps. Like he would work for 45 minutes and then nap for 45 minutes. And that was kind of his life, is a little bit of work, nap, a little bit of work, nap. But he's a famous figure from over 1,000 years ago. So
yeah, I guess
The power
whatever
of nap.
works for you. If you find, if you need, some people only need like 6 hours of sleep a night. I would not function on that if it was consistently 6 hours. Maybe like once in a while I can, but other than that, I mean, I need significantly more sleep. But it varies from person to person. They always say 8 hours is the ideal. Some people need more, some people need less.
Yeah.
Would you say
Absolutely.
there's a differences between a therapist and a life coaches?
Oh, yeah. I sent something to Aaron about that, that the life coaches seem to focus on more like the future and like developing yourself in a larger sense, while therapy is more like the present and might delve into how the past affected you presently.
Okay.
Well, life coach is just like here and now, and what do you want to accomplish, and very forward thinking. Therapy is, and they can't do therapy as a life coach because they're not licensed. But therapy is also about like giving you the tools to make the changes in your life. Not really like, my job isn't to give people advice. It's to give them the skills and tools to make better decisions so they function more healthily.
And what will be a skill that you recommend for a person to be in the present? Like I know in regards to, yes, like getting some sunlight, going out in the outdoors, in the nature. But like other than that, like where those things like can't even click for you, like how do you, like, I don't know, what do you do in that sense?
Well, one of the things, using CBT as your treatment modality, you would, or I would anyway, and what they teach us is that a lot of the things that cause people to be depressed or to be anxious, not consistent. I mean, there is a chemical imbalance as well, but from internal stuff causing external problems are like cognitive distortions, and really like their core beliefs aren't working for them anymore. Core beliefs are something you form, very, very young, at a very young age. And it's kind of the lens through which you see life. And maybe, maybe you saw your parents' relationship and maybe it was really unhealthy. So you thought, well, in relationships, it's okay to scream at someone and hit them. But then you get older and maybe you do that to someone and then you discover, oh, this isn't how healthy relationships function. And so I have to change my belief. A relationship is this, this, and this, and
Yeah.
not what I created in my mind, as a child. So focusing on people's core beliefs and cognitive distortions are the main things. Doing some cognitive restructuring is big, to help someone make the decisions that then, hopefully they have a better life.
That makes a lot
Absolutely.
of sense. Yeah. No, I was saying that makes a lot of sense. Like interpersonal relationships, like when you were young, or like your past self, and like how you are in today.
Yeah, and it's, using CBT, it's not like psychoanalysis where you're like, how do you feel about your mother? It's not that type of therapy. It's very task oriented.
Yeah.
And some people don't like that. I mean, you do homework, you talk about, okay, what problem, it's kind of like, what problem do you want to solve? And how is it impacting your life? So this is what we're going to do. These are the steps we're going to take to solve it. Well, other forms of therapy are not that way. So it's just, kind of, you have to look around for like what type of therapy someone does, and, do some research on, this one seems like it would fit me the most, or the best. And, then, kind of just like interviewing different therapists, because it can take a couple of times before you really connect with someone. People say, that that's a lot of effort to put into it, but like it's worth your while, because if you're going to do therapy, you want it to be with someone you feel safe with, and a safe environment, and connect with, because the therapeutic alliance, that's what's responsible for good outcomes. It's not necessarily even the modality that you use. Research has shown it's the therapeutic alliance that is most important.
Absolutely. I think that, at least me personally, like when I think of therapy, I always think of CBT, and that's because that's what I like. With my neurodivergence, with the ADHD and other things, giving me a task to work on, like a specific, here's the homework, it directs progress for me, because like I've been to like humanistic therapists who are like, how do you feel, and everything, and it's great, and I walk away having the warm fuzzies, but like I'm gonna go home and be like, okay, well, I feel a little bit better, but I haven't really done anything, and nothing against humanistic therapy, like that's great, and all of that, but I think everybody has what they're looking for and what they want to work on with themselves, and what methods help them reach the point where they can get over whatever hurdles they happen to be. Personally, like I said, I love CBT because the task orientation helps keep me focused, which is a problem usually, but it's different for different people. Like I had a friend actually when I was playing hockey who started going to therapy, and I think what they were doing, they were saying is basically they were just kind of trauma dumping on their therapist, and that was all of their therapy session. And I think that's how a lot of us tend to view therapy, is just, hey, I'm getting rid of all of the things that are going on in my life. And then, to be fair, that worked for him. That does not work for me.
Yeah. I have a client who will say, she's like, I don't want treatment. She has anorexia, and she'll say, I don't want treatment for that. I've come to grips. That's who I am. And she's like, I just want someone to vent to. I'm like, well, that's not really therapy. Like, I'm not your friend. I don't know. You might want to talk to a friend or something instead. We have a professional relationship, and my job is, to help you. And every once in a while she'll bring it up, but she doesn't want eating disorder specific therapy. So it's interesting. And, I always tell clients when we're first getting to know each other that, my job is not to see you for 2-3 years. My job is to give you the skills, so you don't need to come here anymore. So you can make these good decisions on your own. You don't need my guidance, in terms of like, okay, well, what tools do you have? What skills can you use? Like you'll do that all by yourself, and then you move on, and hopefully use those tools on a consistent basis. But I'm like, you're not for CBT. I'm like, this is not a long term. It's not, people can be in psychoanalysis for like 5, 6 years, go twice a week. And psychoanalysis requires very specialized training. Like you have to do a separate training besides just what you go through in grad school. But yeah, I mean, another modality that's gaining a lot of traction is acceptance and commitment therapy. And it has good evidence-based, it's evidence-based, and the research, supports that it's very effective for a lot of disorders as well. And a lot of times people use CBT and that together.
Yeah, I was going to bring that up a little bit, Tracy, about acceptance and commitment therapy, because, as the therapist and, in the therapeutic bond, you're helping somebody to identify what values that they have, and, taking that committed action, right, to be able to get to that next step. Because I think we see that with a lot of high performers or overachievers, we would say, going, very limited time schedules. So when they think about attending, therapy, well, that's an hour out of my week, maybe a couple hours out of my week that I could be working on XYZ, sport, work tasks, school, or combination of them all. But I also think about solution focused therapy, and I think of that just based on like crisis intervention, right? Because sometimes people come to us and say, well, I can run a company, I can be the leader of a sports team, but I don't know what to do in, this situation or the next. So, that's why it's important to have those, therapeutic bonds, because at least we help them to build that roadmap of what they need.
Yeah, absolutely. Absolutely. And go ahead.
Oh, go ahead.
I was just say, oddly enough, I've seen 2 psychoanalysts in my life, and it's odd because I'm trained cognitive behavior, and one was before I went to grad school. So, and then one was during grad school, and then I was just having such bad cognitive dissonance because I was like, I mean, I kind of wanted to see what it was like and experiment and see what different types of therapy were like, but it's just so different from cognitive behavioral therapy. I couldn't reconcile what I was learning in school and how effective I thought that was versus psychoanalysis. So it's kind of an interesting experiment, but there's positives and negatives to all different types of therapy. So, I mean, I know when I've assigned homework to people, I got one person was reacted very strongly and said, I didn't come here to get even more stress on my life. I have enough stress getting everything I need to do as a parent and, an employer or employee and everything else. And she's like, I'm not doing the homework and I don't want to, don't even bring it up again. So I was like, okay, you don't have to do the homework. Not trying to stress you out. That's not what this is supposed to be about. But I do think it's helpful because it does, for 45, 50 minutes, once a week, that's not that much time spent considering the goals that you want to achieve. So if you take, have homework that you exercises you do at home, that's just increasing, your skill set because you're putting more time into it than just 45 minutes a week.
I had a boss forever ago who he talked about green time, yellow time, and red time. And he would say green time is you doing the thing that you're supposed to do, working on your job, like spending meaningful quality time with your family, intentional time to get an intentional result that you're looking for at the moment. And he was like, red time is basically you just not doing anything, being lazy, and then yellow time is the preparing for a better turn or a better result from the green time. And he said that really what he sees as the problem that people have is either they just have too much red time where they're spending too much time inactive, but he said that's a lot less than people think it is. It's usually that people don't have efficient yellow time. They don't have intentional time to prepare themselves for the next thing that they're doing and to continue to improve themselves. And like when I heard that, I was like, that makes sense because like I know a ton of hard workers that are in places where they feel stuck. Um, and you know, some of them work like 60, 80 hours a week and still have time for their families, and they're just phenomenal people. Um, but what I also see is that as soon as they aren't in that active mode, it's right into okay, that red time. I'm being lazy, I'm whatever. And there's nothing wrong with that. I think we all need that time, at least a little bit of that time. Um, but I think that, you know, shifting things back to the to high performance places, I think what is so crucial for high performance positions, for high performance jobs, for getting into Ivy League schools, for you know athletics, is being intentional about that yellow time, doing the preparation stuff smartly. Smartly is not a word, is it? But intelligently,
Yeah.
whatever the word is, that's the word I used. Um, but, and I think that what we tend to do, like even the people who do it, what they tend to do is focus on the yellow time that pertains directly to what they're doing. You know, like a stock trader will study stocks. You know, they'll just study over and over again. An athlete will run drills over and over and over again. But a crucial part of that yellow time, I think, for anybody in a high performance situation is preparing the mind to work in that high performance situation. Because like you can be the smartest stock trader in the world, and I can attest to this. I went to school for finance, and I didn't really start making money investing until I controlled the emotional part of myself versus knowing all the formulas and everything. Um, like people tend to overlook that, and what I see, and I think what society sees without really shining a light on it, is that the people who are really successful own that part of it. They own the mental preparedness.
Well, just when you use the word intentionally, it reminded me of yoga, where you set an intention at the beginning of class. I go to yoga like 5 times a week, and it's so helpful mentally to. And if you can't come up with an own, they're like, I offer this as the intention for today, and it just can be a total game changer. You feel so much better when you leave for several reasons. It's a mind body connection. But and they always say like the hardest part is getting here. You got here, you're on your mat. So, that's the most difficult part. Now the rest, um, it's a practice. So if, you fall out of a pose or something, just get right back into it. This isn't, you don't have to be perfect. And, they have a very holistic view of health. And part of that is setting an intention. I think you can do that on a daily basis on your own as well. And it's really helpful.
Absolutely. Absolutely. I'm I'm right there with you on yoga. I love
Yeah.
yoga. We are about out of time, and I just want to thank everybody for joining us. We will be in the coming weeks and months, we will be discussing with academic coaches and athletic coaches about this topic. So stay tuned. It's going to be fun. Thank you to Ali, Dr. Tilton, Robbie for joining us. Thank you to Lamco Wellness for sponsoring this. And thank you to everybody who's watching this. See you next time.
Bye.